The house buzzed with noise the night before the wedding, a restless kind of happiness that moved through the walls like electricity. Chairs scraped the floor, relatives laughed too loudly, and someone kept refilling cups of tea that no one finished. Sarah sat among them, straight-backed and quiet, her face calm in a way that felt almost rehearsed. Tomorrow her younger brother Ion would be married. Tomorrow was supposed to mean joy. For Sarah, it meant something else entirely. She watched her family from a distance even while sitting in the same room. Her mother moved from guest to guest, tired but proud. Her father nodded along to conversations, already lost in thoughts of responsibility and honor. Ian laughed with his friends, unaware of anything beyond the celebration waiting for him. No one noticed how still Sarah was, how her fingers pressed together as if holding something fragile inside. Her Aunt Nadia approached her with a familiar smile, the kind that always looked warm on the surface. Nadia had always been like this, soft voice, caring words, the image of a woman everyone trusted. She sat beside Sarah and leaned in, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "You must be excited for tomorrow," she said. "Your brother's big day." Sarah looked at her aunt and smiled. The smile came easily now. "I can't wait for tomorrow," she replied. The words were simple, ordinary. But Nadia stiffened as if struck by cold air. Her eyes widened just a little, enough for Sarah to see it. Her smile faltered, then returned too quickly. She stood up at once and said she wasn't feeling well. Within seconds, she was gone, leaving behind a silence that only Sarah seemed to notice. Sarah exhaled slowly. 6 months ago, she had not been this calm. Back then, her world had felt solid and full of promise. A proposal had come for her, one her parents approved of and trusted. The family was respected. The future felt clear. Nadia had taken charge of the process, insisting she knew the people well and would handle everything. Sarah had believed her. Everyone had. Days passed, then weeks. The proposal faded without explanation. When Sarah asked, she was told it simply didn't work out. No one gave details. No one seemed worried. They said it was fate, and that something better would come. But whispers have a way of finding the person they are about. Sarah learned the truth by accident. A careless comment from a distant cousin. A pause that lasted too long. A story that didn't line up. Piece by piece, the picture formed. Nadia had spoken to the family. She had painted Sarah as difficult, proud, unsuitable. She had done it calmly, convincingly. She had done it so her own daughter could take Sarah's place. By the time Sarah understood, it was over. The family had moved on. The proposal was redirected. The door closed without a sound. When Sarah confronted her parents, they looked tired. Her mother cried quietly. Her father said it was unfortunate but done. They told her not to create conflict. Nadia was family. These things happened. Reputation mattered. Silence was easier. That silence hurt more than the betrayal. Since then, Sarah had learned to listen instead of speak, to watch instead of react. She noticed how Nadia still played the role of the caring aunt, how people still trusted her words without question. She noticed how her own pain had become invisible, something awkward people avoided. The wedding preparations brought Nadia back into every corner of the house. She helped organize gifts, guided guests, offered advice. Everyone praised her. Sarah watched it all with steady eyes. Now, sitting among the noise and laughter, Sarah felt the past pressing close. The memory of how small she had felt when the truth came out. The shame of being quietly discarded. The anger she had swallowed to keep peace. Tomorrow all of them would be together. Every relative, every voice that had ignored her silence. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, pretending to watch the street below. Her reflection stared back at her, older than she remembered. Stronger too, though she wasn't sure when that had happened. She thought of the things she knew now. The proof she carried. The power she had never asked for but now held. Behind her, the celebration continued. Her cousin called her name, asking her to help with something. Sarah nodded and turned back, slipping easily into the role expected of her. Helpful, polite, invisible. But inside, something was awake. The betrayal had changed her in quiet ways. It had taught her patience. It had taught her how people protect their own choices by calling them necessary. Nadia had not seen herself as cruel. In her mind, she had acted as a mother, securing her child's future. Sarah had simply been in the way. That thought followed Sarah as the night went on. When the guests finally began to leave and the house grew quieter, Sarah helped clean without being asked. She moved through the rooms with purpose, her mind sharp and clear. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. As she went to her room, she passed Nadia's closed door. For a moment she stopped. She imagined the fear behind that door, the questions running through her aunt's mind. Did Sarah know? Would she speak? Would she stay silent like before? Sarah walked on. In her room. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her phone. Messages. Old recordings. Proof gathered during long, lonely nights. She didn't open them. She didn't need to. She already knew what they meant. Tomorrow was not just a wedding. Tomorrow was a test. Sarah lay down and closed her eyes, the noise of the house fading into distant echoes. Her heart beat steady, not fast. She was no longer the girl who waited for others to protect her. Whatever happened next would be her choice. And that, more than anything, was what made tomorrow impossible to wait for. Night settled over the house, but sleep did not come easily. Sarah lay awake, listening to the ceiling fan spin above her, its soft hum cutting through the silence. Every sound felt louder now. The creak of the floor, the distant clink of dishes, the muted voices of relatives still awake. Her mind refused to rest. Tomorrow pressed against her thoughts like a door she could not close. She turned onto her side and stared at the dark wall. The words she had spoken earlier echoed in her head. I can't wait for tomorrow. She had said them calmly, but they carried more meaning than anyone else realized. Especially Nadia. Sarah wondered if her aunt was awake too, trapped in her own thoughts, replaying every lie she had ever told and measuring the risk of being exposed. Sarah sat up and reached for her phone. The screen lit her face in pale blue. She scrolled slowly, not reading yet, just reminding herself that everything was real. Messages saved from months ago, voice notes that still made her chest tighten, screenshots of conversations that had never been meant for her eyes. Each one was a small piece of truth, sharp enough to cut if used the wrong way. She thought about how easily she could end it all. One public moment. One calm speech. She wouldn't need to shout. She wouldn't need anger. The truth alone would do the damage. Nadia's perfect image would crack, and the family would finally understand what had been taken from her. The idea brought a strange sense of control. For months, Sarah had felt powerless, spoken over, dismissed. Revenge offered something different. It offered balance. It promised that pain could be returned, that silence could be broken. But as quickly as the thought came, doubt followed. Sarah imagined the wedding hall filled with guests, Ayan's face glowing with happiness, her parents standing proud. What would happen if she spoke? The room would freeze. Faces would turn. Whispers would rise. Ayan's wedding would be remembered not for joy, but for conflict. The cost of truth would not be paid by Nadia alone. She pressed her phone to her chest and closed her eyes. Sarah wasn't blind to Nadia's side, no matter how much it hurt. She understood the logic her aunt must have used. Nadia had seen an opportunity for her daughter and taken it. She had believed family loyalty meant protecting her own child first. In her mind, Sarah would recover. Life would move on. Sacrifices were necessary. That understanding made the betrayal worse, because it meant Nadia had chosen this, fully aware of the damage. Sarah stood and paced the room, barefoot on the cool floor. Anger rose, then faded, replaced by exhaustion. She had carried this weight alone for too long. Every family gathering, every forced smile, every moment of being treated like she was simply unlucky. It had all added up. She stopped by the window and pulled the curtain aside. The street outside was quiet, lights glowing softly. Somewhere out there, life went on without knowing what tomorrow held for her. That thought steadied her breathing. Revenge felt close now, almost reasonable. It whispered that she deserved justice. That silence had only protected the person who hurt her. That speaking up would finally let her breathe. But another voice pushed back. A quieter one. It asked what would happen after. After the truth was spoken and the damage done. Would Sarah feel lighter or emptier? Would the relief last longer than the regret? She thought of how revenge would bind her to this moment forever. Even if Nadia fell, Sarah would still carry the memory of how it happened. How she chose to strike on her brother's wedding day. That story would follow her, shaping how others saw her, how she saw herself. Sarah returned to her bed and sat down, her hands shaking slightly now. She wasn't afraid of Nadia. She was afraid of who she might become if she let anger lead her. Time passed slowly. The house fell completely silent. Sarah checked the clock and realized it was close to dawn. She hadn't slept at all, yet her mind felt sharper than ever. The decision waited for her, heavy and unavoidable. She opened her phone. Again, this time reading everything carefully. She didn't rush. She didn't skip lines. She faced the truth fully, without looking away. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She had cried enough already. When she finished, she locked the phone and placed it on the table, beside her bed. Sarah lay back and stared at the ceiling, her heart steady again. She didn't know yet what she would do, but she knew this much. Whatever choice she made would define more than just tomorrow. It would shape the way she healed or didn't as the first light of morning crept into the room. Sarah felt the weight of the night lift slightly. The struggle wasn't over. The conflict still lived inside her. But she was no longer running from it. Tomorrow was no longer just about revenge. It was about who she wanted to be when this was finally over. The wedding day arrived wrapped in light, color, and noise. Music filled the air, bright and constant, as if joy itself had been given a rhythm. The hall shimmered with decorations, flowers lining every path, smiles fixed on every face. Guests moved in groups, greeting one another, laughing, taking photos. It looked perfect. It felt unreal. Sarah walked through the crowd slowly, her posture calm, her expression gentle. Inside, everything was sharp and awake. Every sound felt clear. Every face stood out. She noticed things she never would have before, the nervous excitement in Ayan's smile, the pride in her parents' eyes, the way people spoke about family and blessings without knowing what hid beneath the surface. Nadia sat near the front, dressed elegantly, her back straight, her hands folded. She looked confident, like someone who belonged exactly where she was. When she laughed, Others laughed with her. When she spoke, people leaned in. Nothing about her suggested guilt. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She moved to a quieter corner of the hall and took a breath. This was the moment she had imagined all night. Everything she needed was with her. Her phone rested in her hand, light but powerful. The truth waited there, patient and silent. The host announced that close family members would be invited to say a few words. Sarah's name was called. Heads turned. A few people smiled at her warmly, expecting kindness, pride. Sarah stood each step toward the stage felt deliberate, as if the floor itself was watching her choose. Her heart beat fast but steady. She did not feel out of control. She felt clear as she reached the microphone. Her eyes moved across the crowd. She saw her parents, smiling softly. She saw Ian, unaware, happy. Then she saw Nadia. Nadia looked up and met Sarah's gaze. For a second, time seemed to slow. Nadia's smile stiffened. Her eyes searched Sarah's face, looking for something anger. Certainty warning. She found nothing. Sarah's expression was calm, almost kind. But Nadia understood. Fear flickered across her face, quick but real. Her fingers tightened together. She shifted in her seat. She knew that everything she had buried could surface now. In front of everyone she had worked, so hard to impress. The hall grew quiet. Sarah placed her hands on the microphone. She could hear her own breathing. She could hear the music fade behind her. The moment was here. She began to speak. Her voice was steady, clear, and soft enough that people leaned forward to listen. She spoke about growing up together, about shared memories, about how family shapes who a person becomes. Her words were warm, careful, thoughtful. People nodded along. Some smiled. Nadia relaxed slightly, confused. Then Sarah's tone shifted not. Darker, not louder, but deeper. She spoke about trust, about how easily it is given, and how dangerous it can be when broken. She spoke about quiet betrayals, the kind that happen behind closed doors, dressed up as concern or duty. She spoke about how silence can protect harm just as easily as it protects peace. The room stayed silent. Nadia's breath caught. She leaned forward, her body tense. She knew these words were not random. They were aimed. Measured. Sarah paused. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket now, as if reminding her it existed. She could pull it out. She could end the guessing. She could say names. She could say everything. She looked at Ian again. He smiled at her, proud, trusting, waiting for something hopeful. In that moment, something shifted inside her. Sarah realized this was not just about Nadia anymore. It was about her own future, about whether she would let this pain decide the rest of her life, about whether revenge would truly give her back what she lost, or take something else instead. She returned her gaze to the crowd. I hope, she said, slowly, that we all remember how powerful our choices are, that we understand the weight of our words when spoken about others. Because sometimes the deepest wounds come not from enemies, but from those we trust the most. The words landed quietly, but firmly. Nadia's face drained of color. She did not move. She did not blink. She knew now that Sarah knew everything, and had chosen not to expose her. The fear did not leave her. It grew heavier, turning inward. Sarah took a breath. We should celebrate love today, she continued. Not just the love that brings people together, but the kind that asks us to be honest, even when it's hard. She stepped back from the microphone. Applause followed, polite and warm. People smiled, relieved. The tension passed unnoticed. By most, the moment moved on, but Nadia stayed frozen. As Sarah walked back to her seat. Her legs trembled slightly. Not from regret, not from victory, from release. She had stood at the edge and chosen her path. The rest of the ceremony continued, but Nadia barely heard it. Her thoughts raced. Sarah's words echoed again and again, louder than any accusation. She had not been forgiven. She had been spared, and that frightened her more than public shame ever could. Sarah sat quietly, watching the celebration unfold. The urge for revenge faded, replaced by a dull ache that felt honest and real. She had not erased the past, but she had refused to let it control this moment. As the couple stood together, smiling under bright lights, Sarah understood something clearly. The power she held was not in destroying someone else. It was in deciding when not to. And that choice, made in the middle of music and flowers, changed her more than revenge ever could. The wedding ended the way weddings always do, with tired smiles and quiet goodbyes. Guests left carrying sweets and memories, unaware of the storm that had almost broken in the middle of celebration. When the last car disappeared down the street, the house finally grew still. Decorations wilted under the weight of a long day. Laughter faded into silence. Sarah helped clean without being asked. She folded cloths, stacked plates, and moved through rooms that felt unfamiliar now, as if something invisible had shifted their shape. Her body felt light and heavy at the same time. She wasn't sure what she expected to feel after everything, but it wasn't this calm. Nadia avoided her at first. It was small. A turn of the head, a step taken in the opposite direction. By evening, it was clear. Nadia did not speak to Sarah, did not meet her eyes, did not offer instructions or advice the way she always used to. The confident aunt was gone, replaced by a careful woman measuring every move. Sarah noticed, and for the first time, she felt no satisfaction in it. That night, when the house finally slept, Sarah sat alone in her room. She placed her phone on the table and looked at it for a long time. The proof was still there. Nothing had changed that. Nadia's actions had not become smaller just because Sarah chose silence. But something inside Sarah had changed, she realized. She was no longer waiting for an apology. She no longer needed the family to see Nadia differently. The hunger to be believed had loosened its grip. What mattered now was what she believed about herself. Days passed. Life returned to routine. But not completely. Nadia became quieter, less involved, less eager to speak for others. She smiled less. When she did speak, her words were careful, weighed down by fear of being misunderstood. The power she once held slipped away without anyone noticing. Sarah watched this from a distance. Her parents noticed the shift too, though they never named it. Her mother looked at Sarah differently now, with a mix of concern and respect. Her father spoke to her more gently, as if sensing something he had once ignored. No one asked questions. No one pushed. Silence, this time, felt earned. One afternoon, Sarah found Nadia alone in the kitchen. The air between them felt thick. Nadia's hands trembled slightly as she poured tea. She did not look up. "I didn't think you knew," Nadia said quietly, her voice thin. Sarah didn't answer right away. She watched the steam rise from the cup. "I knew," she said simply. Nadia swallowed. "Why didn't you say anything?" The question carried fear, not anger. Sarah met her eyes. "Because I didn't want to become someone I wouldn't recognize." Nadia looked away. There were no excuses left to offer. No justification that would sound noble now. She nodded once, as if accepting a truth she could no longer escape. I was wrong, Nadia said. The words were small but real. Sarah nodded and left the room. She didn't stay to hear more. She didn't need to. That night, Sarah walked outside alone. The sky was clear, the air cool. She felt the weight she had carried for months finally ease. Not disappear, but loosen enough to breathe. Freely. She understood now that revenge had promised closure, but would have given her a different kind of prison. Exposing Nadia would have tied her forever to that moment, that anger, that loss. Choosing restraint had not erased the pain, but it had given her space to heal. Healing, she realized, was quieter than revenge. Less dramatic, but deeper. Weeks later, life moved forward. New opportunities came slowly. Conversations changed. Sarah felt herself opening up again, not because the past no longer mattered, but because it no longer ruled her. She still remembered what had been taken from her. She always would, but it no longer defined her worth. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the house filled with soft light, Sarah stood by the window and reflected on the choice she had made. She had stood at the edge of revenge and stepped back, not out of fear, but out of strength. She had learned that justice and peace do not always walk the same path. Sometimes, choosing peace costs more in the moment, but gives more in the end. Revenge had asked her to look backward. Letting go had allowed her to move forward. And for the first time since the betrayal, Sarah felt truly free.